Thank God he read Adios America. I mean, I feel like one of those insects that gives birth and then can go off and die. I've done all I need to do. Donald Trump read that book.
Ann Coulter on this program earlier this month, and she's very much alive. Obviously, the topic then as it is now. Donald Trump, his approach to illegal immigration, and making mention of her previous book, Adios America, that helped shape Mr. Trump's policies concerning illegal immigration. Of course, Ann is the author of the newly released book, In Trump We Trust, E Pluribus Awesome. Ann joins us again tonight from Newsmax, New York. And Ann, let's pick it up. You were talking before the break about this S word, softening.
Right.
Now, I've got a couple of thoughts on it, but you're saying it's more tone than policy, correct?
Right, and he was lured into it during an interview where he was appearing with those Remembrance Project moms, the mothers of American kids who have been horribly murdered by illegal aliens. We've never seen them before until Donald Trump is running for president. He appears with them at rallies. Last week he was simultaneously giving speeches, and look, we've known what his plan was, as I say, from day one, and that was immigration was his first policy paper. We're going to have a country again. We're going to have borders. He's going to enforce the law. We don't need a new deportation force. We have one. It's called the Immigration and Customs Enforcement. And as for the softening, look, I suspect Donald Trump already knew that Americans are compassionate and kind people. This will not be done in a nasty and aggressive way, but it will be done to benefit the American people. And even, I mean, to be constantly concentrating on these hard cases and the hard cases. The reason there's a cliche, hard cases make bad law, is because it's true. And for 20 years now, every time we get close to enforcing immigration law, suddenly the law has to be written so the entire solar system revolves around the one case of that poor illegal alien who's law-abiding.
Right, and we've forgotten about law-abiding American citizens, and you've brought it to the fore, and Mr. Trump has talked about it, and I tried to write about it 10 years ago. But my point is this: during my days in Congress, J.C. Watts said there were two ways to deliver a message. You could say, and obviously this doesn't apply to you, Ann, this is for illustrative purposes only. You could say, "Woman, you've got a face that would stop a clock," or you can say, "Darling, when I gaze into your eyes, time stands still." Arguably, you're conveying the same message, but you're doing it in a different way. For example, I put forth the notion that we forget using the D word. Let's talk about compassionate reunions of families in their countries of origin. Now, we don't have to, but that's saying deportation in a nice, pleasant way. It changes the tone, but not the policy.
Right, right. That's really all Trump needs to do. But the main point is, and we know this, and I do describe this in my book, the one thing Trump is getting used to, you know, Washington speak and a lot of things that politicians know instinctively. He has been a successful developer all this time. We always say we want a non-politician. Well, you got one, America. But the one thing that Trump's life is shot through with for decades now, long before the presidency was a twinkle in his eye, is that he loves America, he loves Americans, he cares about working class Americans, and every illegal immigrant, the most law-abiding illegal immigrant, is costing the American taxpayer money. We are a very generous people. We will do a lot, we have done a lot to take care of the rest of the world, but now it's time for a little me time for America.
Fair enough. Let me just let me ask you this, since it's me time for you talking about this new book. Do you think, in a sense, this book, In Trump We Trust, is a kind of sequel to Adios America?
Yes, I mean, the urgent book to read now is In Trump We Trust, because we only have until November 8th, but I really sort of think of them as companion books, Adios America and In Trump We Trust. I do have some references to immigration, well, a lot of immigration, especially how Trump talks about it versus how the other Republicans talk about it, which is which is just nonsense and gobbledygook. It's hilarious. I mean, I read through the debates, having watched them all at the time, often watched them a couple of times, but reading through the debates, oh my gosh, JD, I never realized how much I hate my own party, or at least my ex-Republican Party, not the new, fresh, Trumpian Republican Party, because what they do when they're asked questions, maybe you know this. Maybe you go to class as a congressman to learn it, but at least the presidential candidates, they come up with all these words to sound like they're compassionate and sensitive, but they don't answer the question. So basically what they're doing is repeating the question back to the questioner without a solution. So with illegal immigration or a fence, a border, a wall, for example, they all say, people are frustrated, and I'm listening, and they think that the border is not working for them. I mean, it's hilarious. Trump just comes out and says, we need a wall.
And that refreshing candor is what won him the nomination, and we will see if it wins him the general election. Now, his opponent, Hillary Clinton, we heard from her a bit earlier, but here she is again at the American Legion, stressing that her experience has given her a genuine idea of what American leadership really is. Here's Mrs. Clinton again.
American leadership means leading with our values, in pursuance of our interests, in protection of our security. At our best, the United States is the global force for freedom, justice, and human dignity.
Oh my goodness, poll-tested, glittering generalities. Is that just what she's going to do from here to November?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, this is what all these politicians do. We got a lot of it from the Republicans, too. But I was thinking the same thing. I think it's the influence of Trump that even got her to include that part about mentioning America's interests. But yeah, that's politicians speak for we're going to be the politician or the policeman of the world. The way we'll keep America safe is apparently by you know, something simple like remaking the entire Middle East into Jeffersonian democracies. Trump's idea is, let's not bring the terrorists here. We wish the rest of the world good luck. We may have to go in and act in our interest. But how about, you know, a quick bombing raid and not these endless wars where our greatest Americans die and it ends up being, as in the case of Iraq, great, proving ground for ISIS. That worked out fantastically well. And as you know, I was a huge Iraq War supporter. I do blame Obama for turning our victory into a defeat. But yet and still, whomever is right, why would you want to do it again?
Well, this is the thing. Unapologetically, unabashedly, America first is the Trump message, and that's why it carries appeal. Conversely, we see new polling from the Washington Post and ABC News, Mrs. Clinton's unfavorables at an all-time high. As a matter of fact, now look at this. For all intents and purposes, it's within the margin of error. Both Mr. Trump and Mrs. Clinton, Mr. Trump at 60% unfavorable, Hillary at 59% unfavorable. Now, you know, again, I'm a recovering member of Congress, Ann, but standing at the bar of public opinion every 2 years, when your unfavorability shows up at about 43%, that's when you're starting to get toxic. Your take on these new numbers for both major candidates?
Well, I've been trying to resist discussing the polls because I still think Trump is going to win, but I don't want to sound like a nut and say I'm discounting the polls. So I've been saying, look, I just think the polls are going to change. But I do find this interesting. For the past month, we have seen the polls tightening. Trump either catching up, tying, or even in a few polls ahead of Hillary Clinton. And this is after the most relentless, ferocious, unified media attack on Donald Trump as certainly I've seen in my lifetime, and I've read about what they did to Joe McCarthy, Richard Nixon, and Barry Goldwater, and I think it's worse than that. I mean, from day one, Trump has been compared to Hitler, David Duke, and by the way, part of the reason you know his speeches since the convention, and including the convention speech, have been absolutely fabulous is the media won't show you those speeches. I hope Newsmax does. Those speeches have been fantastic. But you turn on TV at night and they're never actually showing the speeches. It's various anchors on all the networks but Newsmax saying, trust us, it was an awful speech.
Yeah, well, that's why we're not the
Newsmax
media, we're Newsmax. That's right. And let me just, one final point. One final point on this, Ann, in about 40 seconds. Because of what the dominant media culture is doing to try to interpret for the American people what Mr. Trump is saying, will we see with this election, if Mr. Trump is successful, basically the rejection of the dominant media culture and a new informational order established in the United States?
I certainly hope so. I mean, the media does seem to just simply not care about its credibility this election season. They've just decided it doesn't matter. The American people already don't trust us. Let's just throw away that last bit of trust. It does concern me because propaganda does work. And even people who hate the media, when they hear the same thing over and over and over again. And I mean, some of those lies I address in my book. The lie about what Trump said about John McCain. The lie about Trump making fun of the disabled reporter. The lies are just so pervasive,
and that's
so repetitive.
That's why we have to pick up your new book, In Trump We Trust. E Pluribus Awesome and Coulter, thanks so much. More to come here on Newsmax Prime. Stay with us.